APB, American Protection Bureau, voted #1 best on Long Island for all your security needs. Call 631-390-9050. That's 631-390-9050. APB.
You need a body shop? You need engine repair? Auto Excellence, Collision Specialists, 631-261-6420. That's 631-261-6420. Auto Excellence. Jimmy, I gotta take a dump.
What?
No, I mean I need a dumpster.
Well, for all those needs, you need to call Big V Dumpster Rental, Long Island, New York, 631-900-DUMP. Elm Logistics, for all your logistic needs, call 631-299-3595. That's 631-299-3595. Elm Global Logistics, pride, performance, and partnerships. The Monty and the Pharaoh Show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite four-letter word. California wine, New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
Tired of that same old breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Same old tasting scrambled eggs, burger, that dinner steak, ribs, or pork chops? Why not add a little bit of spice or just a touch of heat to make the difference? Change that scrambled egg with a little bit of Johnny Fabulous's John Cena Sr.'s $1 Million Jalapeno Hot Sauce. Great on burgers, steaks, chops, and those barbecued ribs.
And Nitro's Garage for all your automotive needs. Call 646-675-2349. That's 646-675-2349. For all your automotive needs, Nitro's Garage. Ask for Jack.
Do you treat your dog as part of the family? Well, so do we. So why not celebrate your pup's birthday with the ultimate party box? Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Party Pup Info, and let us make your pup's party or any celebration perfection.
M&J Video Games and Collectibles. Sport and non-sport cards, wrestling items, autographed items. We buy, sell, and trade. M&J Video Games and Collectibles, located at 1049 Queen Street, Southington, Connecticut. Call us at 1-860-479-9223 or 860-93-GAMES. M&J, Video Games and Collectibles.
Vince McMahon, the former owner of WWE, has resigned from TKO Endeavor Sports. You gotta be kidding me. What the Vince McMahon is accused of sex trafficking in a new lawsuit.
Vince McMahon is now under federal investigation.
Sports entertainment industry has been rocked by Vince McMahon, and the timing could not be any worse.
We begin tonight with breaking news. Vinnie Mac is out at WWE.
Wow, what an intro. Welcome back, my friends, to True Crime with the Bad Girl and the Player. My name is Benny Scala, a.k.a. The Player. I'm the co-host of the long-running Dan and Benny in the Ring podcast, as well as a weekly participant on The 30 and Wrestling Remembered shows, all of which can be seen on the Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel. And I'm joined, as always, by my partner in True Crime, the Boston Bad Girl, the Siren of Scituate, legendary professional wrestler, Brittany Brown. Brittany, how you doing? Any good pup stories? Bree and I had a no DQ match this week in which I woefully lost.
Oh my goodness, that's terrible! You're not even in the same weight class.
It was a squash match.
Oh my God! No, I'm not having a good pet week. I have three.
I saw your story on Facebook. It was not very good.
Yeah. The cat was dropped off at 7:30 this morning, and I picked her up at 4:30, and she had like stroke-like symptoms.
Oh no!
And come to find out, she's got high blood pressure. I didn't even know that was a cat thing.
A cat can have high blood pressure. Come on.
My goodness.
Yep.
Sound like
So I
Miss-
picked.
Come on.
Come on.
Come on.
I picked
Where is he? Let me see him.
I never heard of that before.
Drive-through. You know, she was 60 points over every time they checked her.
Wow.
Severely high blood pressure. She's elderly and she's diabetic, so she's now going on human blood pressure medication.
My God.
You know, Brittany, medicine aside, there are a couple ways to, I think, lower blood pressure, at least with humans. And I don't know if it goes for cats, but chiropractic adjustment, adjusting the atlas, the head and neck, has been known to bring human points down, several points, human readings on the both readings, both the top and bottom. So I don't know if that's something that's there, but, you know, there are other options too. You know, that's certainly one of them.
Well, thank you, Dr. Phil. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, it's already becoming a little bit. I was going to say this is going to be a little bit different than most episodes of ours, and already started that way. But normally our subject has been associated with one or several murders, which in most cases happened many years ago. But this is a scandal that is like it's unfolding as we speak, and there are no dead bodies. And I do need to preface this that as of this moment, Vincent Kennedy McMahon has not been charged with any crimes yet. We live in a country where we are innocent until proven guilty, and that applies to a court of law. Now, this gathering here is the court of public opinion, which is a little bit different. So we're all going to give our opinions and speculations to how this is all going to go down, and I'm sure we're going to have a follow-up episode in the future to crown the champion prognosticator. And our guests from last week's Whitey Bulger episode were just so awesome that we wanted to have him back one more time, especially since this episode is wrestling related. And first, my fellow contestant from Thursday night, Under 30, and co-panelist on Friday night's Wrestling Remembered show, the president of Thursday night, Mr. Senor Guns, the Count of Monte Fisto, Mr. Phil DeSestre. I threw the Monte Fisto thing in because it just sounded cool. Phil, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed last week's show. And, you know, as I always say, wrestling fans around the corner and around the world, I'm so happy to be a part of the Crime Time bunch tonight. So I look forward to this. It's a great topic, and I think we have a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah, we certainly do. And how could I forget my brother from another mother? He's the host of the absolutely wonderful show, What a Day in Centerville, which can be seen at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time every Wednesday night. He's also a fellow contestant on the 30. Actually, he's the reigning and defending champion, and he's also the host of Wrestling Remembered on Friday night. Joe, What a Day Lowry, how are you? You might think of changing that moniker to What a Schedule. It's pretty busy.
Yeah, what a schedule is right. Big news tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. You have to tune into that. So I can't let the cat out of the bag just yet, but there's a lot of exciting stuff happening with What a Day. So keep that in mind. But by the way, I just want to let everybody know that I'm glad to be participating tonight, and I am currently not under federal investigation. I just want to let everybody know that so we can go forward.
Excellent.
Nicely done.
What a day. What a day.
Well, guys, why not let's dive right in. Joe, since you were the one who you sent me the initial legal document, why don't you give our listeners a Reader's Digest version of the impending lawsuit by Janelle Grant?
Well, the lawsuit basically is just it's filled with very, very detailed accounts, text messages, emails, the relationship that developed between Janelle Grant, who was an employee with WWE. It actually goes before she was an employee with WWE, and including Vincent Kennedy McMahon. In a nutshell, Janelle Grant is basically suing Vince McMahon to get out of this non-disclosure agreement that has taken place. Now, in doing so, you have to prove there's an agreement in place. You have to prove what's inside the agreement and so forth. Her claim right now, she's not suing criminally. She's suing civilly. There has been no criminal charges yet against Mr. McMahon. 90% of these cases do settle out of court, but what we have to let our viewers know that she is suing to get out of this non-disclosure agreement. That's basically what she's doing. She's not suing for money. She's not suing Vince for the trauma and all that stuff that's happened. Now, since then, there's a lot has come out. A lot of stuff has been thrown out there. We did an episode with Mike and the 30 and all those crew and everything on Monty the Pharaoh. These text messages that are so graphic. I can throw some of them up on the screen. I am not going to read them verbatim, but you can see that this is evidence that is now being looked at from what I understand, a grand jury looking to indict Ms. McMahon criminally on this. But this is all part of the civil lawsuit. These are just some excerpts, text messages that include John Laurinaitis, a former WWE corporate employee, Vincent McMahon, Janelle Grant, and of course there is a reference to a former UFC champion / WWE superstar who needs to be resigned. There's some sex trafficking allegations where Vince wanted Janelle to sleep with this UFC star. The Wall Street Journal publicly came out and named that person Brock Lesnar, but we have to be careful here. He's not named in this civil lawsuit. Only the reference to a UFC champion / WWE superstar. We have to keep that in mind now, folks. Now, there's a lot of angles we can come at this tonight. We're going to get I'm sure a lot of people are going to be in the chat room. I can see a lot of people chiming in now. This is a very hot topic. I can see the viewership growing as we're watching this. This is a hot topic, not only because it's WWE. I also think the timing is horrible. This happened right before the Royal Rumble. We're 61 days out away from WWE / Endeavor TKO biggest event of the year, WrestleMania. We call this WrestleMania season. For those not familiar with WWE circles, this is their biggest time. TV media rights deal were just announced. You talk about a roller coaster ride. We went through this 2 weeks ago. Monday was the Netflix deal for Raw. The next thing it was TKO and The Rock joining the board. The Rock joining TKO Endeavor's board. And then 2 days later, boom, this lawsuit drops, and it just took over the internet. So we have to be careful. We're not assuming Vince McMahon is guilty. The court of public opinion, unfortunately, does things backwards, where you are guilty, then proven innocent, or vice versa. But we know the court of a public opinion can be very, very scary. So we want to reiterate, though, we have to be careful that Ms. McMahon has not been found guilty of anything. But what's going to come out in these conversations in this lawsuit is that there was a very, very, I'm just going to say it, a very sick culture within WWE corporate and Vince McMahon. And I think I saw a great line the other day. It was like, what was he? I thought somebody who wasn't even involved with wrestling says, Vince McMahon, I thought he ran a wrestling company, not a brothel. And that struck me, because that's the casual person looking at it like this. We're wrestling fans. We've been on the inside. We cover this day to day. This is a huge bombshell nonetheless. This is huge.
Absolutely. Now I'm going to start with Brittany, and I'm going to pass this question around the horn. But I think this question is central to all of this, because, this question determines, is it just consenting adults, engaging in very depraved behavior, or is it a criminal activity? So, Brittany, and I'm not saying, the average woman, but is it conceivable that this woman, Joe mentioned that she's not looking for money. She not at all. She never mentioned any compensatory damages. It seems like the court of public opinion has already convicted this woman. I've even heard her called on this channel a whore. Is it possible that now this woman, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, and anybody in the room is welcome to comment as well, but she was caring for aging parents who passed away. Yep. And she was encountering a lot of financial issues. Her condo manager, referred her to Vince McMahon, and then they met, and he offered her a job, and of course now we're here. But is it possible that this woman, who is definitely very vulnerable, younger, in financial straits, could have, and I'm not saying did, but could have fallen a victim to him in terms of being in an abusive relationship? Is it at least possible?
I think so. I think anybody can be in an abusive relationship, a female or a male, young or old. I mean, it's definitely possible, but there's nothing that anybody could give me give me $10 million offer to sleep with Vince McMahon. The answer would be no. give me,
Right.
$500,000 of Macy's cards or whatever Lord and Taylor, all this crap he supposedly gave her to sleep with his friends and all this. I wouldn't do it, but would somebody else? Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, I bet somebody would do it for a Quiznos
and I
sub,
think there's way more than her that did. And yeah. You never know. You never know. Somebody might do it for $1,000, depending on how destitute they were. But I can tell you, I would live in my car before I would sleep with somebody for money. So, yeah, everybody's different. But I find it hard to believe that somebody could be that controlled. That they would just give up their body to anyone and let them do anything to them that is so degrading based on those texts and
according to the lawsuit, there are some allegations in the lawsuit that some of this went against her will. Most notably, a sexual assault between Vince, John Laurinaitis, and her inside Vince's office or John's office or somebody's office in WWE. That right there constitutes a crime. If that is seriously alleged, we're crossing over into criminal liability here. So,
but I mean, and we were talking before the show we were talking about cults and like something like Scientology, where very, very intelligent people pretty much sign their whole lives away for years and years. So, why is it that much of a stretch that this woman fell into the influence of a very, very powerful man? And just followed his will.
Dr. Phil, why don't you chime in?
Yeah.
Isn't it ultimately making a deal with the devil? Isn't Vince kind of known already as the devil in many ways?
You mean Mr. McMahon?
Mr. McMahon, yeah. He's told us he's the devil. He told us he's God. And, I believe he might be one or both of them somehow. This is a guy we grew up with, first of all, and who's, over 40 years, at least in my case, we've invited into our homes, and he's been a guest in our homes for several hours a week. Again, going for decades now. So we bring, I think, an interesting perspective, and it kind of hits us a little more too, and we've seen the whole evolution of Vince McMahon, not only as a character, but in his own world from announcer. And even, Benny, you go back further when Vince replaced Ray Morgan, right?
Oh, yeah.
And just that evolution. And, as he gained control and as he took this company into what it has become today. You're going to get a lot of people, I think, feeling for Vince in many ways and maybe defending him a little more than they should. We have consenting adults here. And yes, we also have potentially a grooming situation, a person who capitalized on a tragic situation and to satisfy his own ends. And but we have also the victim here, and we'll call her victim for this moment. She went along for the program. And could this have been the case where this was just a business deal gone awry? That's certainly possible too. So it's really layered. It's nuanced. I don't know that we're going to have the perspective to really make a judgment now. But in the end, as Lenny Bruce said, what was his famous quote? In the halls of justice, all the justice is done in the halls. So I think this is going to be something ultimately settled out of the courtroom. We recently had another very high profile case involving a billionaire, and without getting into names and any of that, who was quite chummy with Vince in his own right, who was now found to owe tens of millions of dollars for this case that happened a long time ago. And the accuser couldn't remember the year it took place, couldn't remember the day, the month, or any situation like that. And, the case on its merits from the little that, we know, seems to stink, but in the end, the defendant is slated to spend or to owe, tens of billions of dollars in compensation, not even just for the crime, but for accusing the defendant of making it up in essence. So I just shudder to think what could happen here. I mean, we want justice to be served. We do. We want, if there is a victim in this case, we want to make sure that justice is served. But, as Gorilla Monsoon would say, we don't want a miscarriage of justice either,
Right. A lot of comments in the chat room, and Foxhole Willie saying she was free to walk away. But, I mean, how many women stay in abusive relationships? How many battered women are there? I mean, you could say the same thing with them. You could, go to the police, you could walk away, but they come back to their husbands or boyfriends or whatever. It's a syndrome. It's not just, we're not dealing with somebody in their total right mind. They are under the influence of this person to the point where they do give up a lot of control, I think. And again, that's my opinion, but I don't think, I don't think we should be very quick, and it's all going to come out, I'm sure, eventually. But in my opinion, this woman very well could have been a victim.
Let's not forget, too, we're the last to see what comes out. By the time it makes the press, we're getting either the watered down version or whatever is going on. The only access we have to right now is the lawsuit. And that's filed in court. That's a public document. You can find it online. I have copies. I send a copy to the guys. The lawsuit is pretty straightforward. It gives times, it gives dates, it gives instances. Now, the thing that I kind of find crazy, is that Vince McMahon's been under investigation since July. Actually, July of 2022, he was investigated. And the reason they investigated him back then was because when this TKO Endeavor deal was starting to go down, they were missing $17 million. And that's when it came out that he had some other NDAs. He paid some hush to other women. We don't know who they are. From what I've heard now from the lawyers, their emails, their inboxes are inundated with emails from these women who do want to come forward and let them know what's been going on. So there is a pattern here. There's no doubt about it. Now, the WWE stance, corporate-wise, is that the feds are now back involved in Vince's life because they seized his cell phone, documents, all that stuff. He had a subpoena sent to him and so forth. They just think it's a continuation of that investigation. No one saw this bombshell from 2 weeks ago with Janelle Grant. And let me just put up a comment that she had came out with the New York Post on behalf of her lawyers. Janelle Grant, the lawyers, said that Janelle hopes any doors of secrecy have been blown off their hinges and that fresh air fills the headquarters. She hopes that those at the company, past and present, who fear speaking out about harm is a thing of the past, and she wishes everyone peace. They had to come out with that statement because there are people. I just got wind. I think 20 minutes ago, someone said Ava Raine, The Rock's daughter, is now getting death threats.
That's ridiculous. That's crazy.
Gonna run. So they have to control what's being released to the media / us. We see the end game. We only see what's happening now, what they want to release to us. If they're just touching the surface, which the lawyer says, this could be historic proportions. I mean, not to say that the allegations in this lawsuit are not historic enough, but this might go even further. It's going to get really, really hairy. And it's like I said, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So,
and what about the fact now that John Laurinaitis? Remember, Phil? Do you remember the Bowery Boys?
Yeah.
Slip Mahoney, the worm has turned. So all of a sudden now, John Laurinaitis is now a victim too. But the interesting thing, and he spoke to his lawyer. He didn't deny anything. He didn't say none of her allegations. All he said was that he was a victim as well. To me, I infer that this would. Number one, that means that he's saying that she's a victim. Yeah. And number two, he's corroborating that all this stuff happened. That's the way I take it anyway.
Yeah, not a great defense on John's behalf. I mean, you can just outright deny it, but to say that he's a victim and he's not denying that the events took place. If he just self-incriminated himself because in that lawsuit says that John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon sexually assaulted this woman in an office. He just outed himself. So whether or not he's in handcuffs right now, I don't know. But this is a fine line here, and this is all based on a civil lawsuit. There's no criminal charges have not been filed yet. There is a strong possibility, though, with this investigation, with the feds now involved, if they uncover an inkling of anything illegal, whether it's sex trafficking, sexual assault, she said no, he said yes, no means yes, that type of thing. This is going to get really, really bad. Really,
well, then it all boils down to my question. Then, is she a victim or is she a participant? And I mean, otherwise, in one instance, you just have, you have sexual depravity, and the other side, you have a crime.
Right.
I think Laurinaitis maybe he knows more than we know as far as what's coming down. And he's thinking, man, I better hitch my wagon to this girl as opposed to Camp McMahon, because I don't think it's looking very good for Vince.
Yeah. And how many other superstars are involved that haven't been named yet?
They will be soon. You'll see.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to say, though, is Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, is that these NDAs apparently were not done with the knowledge and consent of the WWE. He kind of just did these on his own, correct?
Right. And if you look at the NDA that's on file with the civil lawsuit, I know we talked about this backstage before we came on. Vince McMahon didn't sign her NDA. That whole thing could be null and void, and she can just go public and tell everybody her story and all that. She's just trying to do it the right way. Lawyers are now advising her that this does not appear to be a valid non-disclosure agreement, because a valid non-disclosure agreement is one lawyer, parties in the middle, everyone gets copies. And so far, the copies that have been presented in the lawsuit by Janelle Grant and her lawyers, none of them are signed by Vincent McMahon. So we're looking at a whole avenue on that aspect.
Are they even enforceable? I mean, are any of them enforceable?
They're gonna have to go to court and figure that out. Yeah.
Is this going to be the next Bill Cosby? I mean, that was my thought.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy, huh? Another fallen icon.
All the victims start coming forward.
It's a Harvey Weinstein effect. It's going to be the Harvey Weinstein effect. You'll see.
I mean, this all started back in the 80s with Rita Chatterton. Isn't that the first one that became public?
Yep. And they claimed that she was trying to do a money grab. That's what they claim on that. So this could be a lifelong thing with Vince McMahon. We're just finding out about stuff now. Well, this is the scary part. We're only getting what they're allowing us to see.
Right.
Once this thing hits the courtroom, which they don't think it will, it'll be settled out of court. We don't know if we'll ever get the real truth or the real situations, but what's been presented to us right now in the court is damaging enough to take anybody down. I don't know how this is going to go any other way.
Well, let's go back a little bit, though. Let's talk about, we got the Jimmy Snuka incident where, allegedly Vince McMahon went to the police station with a briefcase of money.
Yeah.
Things kind of went on the hush hush. You got the whole thing with Mel Phillips with the young boys.
Yeah.
You got Rita Chatterton. You got the steroid scandal, and you got the death of Owen Hart. I mean, you have all this other stuff. This isn't it's not like the guy was a choir boy and this all happened out of nowhere. You have a long body of work of just shitty behavior.
And true. And to talk about that too in the business front, buying Stu's territory, buying Stampede and not paying Stu for that. Mm-hmm. Then going out west to LA to Mike LaBelle, buying that territory and the rights and stiffing him on the deal too. So there certainly seems to be a history of welching on deals. And I think in this case, particularly with Miss Grant, I think that was the final welch that kind of caught up to him. So, there's a history there of that too. And ultimately that's going to bite you.
Yeah, no, that is true. That is true. From what I've been seeing about the latest Wall Street Journal's report today that came out, that federal agents have confirmed that they are in contact with other women, and that's plural. They didn't say how many, but they did say women, plural. So there are more out there who are coming forward. Now, whether or not they approve for NDAs or stuff like that remains to be seen. But like I said, the court of public opinion, if he hasn't taken a beating now, what's going to happen when all hell's break loose with everything? I don't know. It's just going to be not good.
Is it a case of art imitating life or life imitating art? Because, we've seen this history of these, the storylines that we've seen, probably don't even probe the depths of the storylines that we haven't seen and that have been kind of squashed along the way. And we've heard whisperings and talk of them, and even directly from some of the people to whom these were proposed, this whole idea of Stephanie pregnant and perhaps it being Vince's baby, and then no, then maybe making it Shane. So that undertone, highly disturbing stuff. We harken back to Katie Vick too.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, and and these things just very disturbing. I mean, we as wrestling fans too, we appreciate the edgy product and that sort of thing, but watching some of this, I've been like, really, where's this coming from? It's like, I just can't get into this part of it, and so it's funny how, and again, it's a two-way street, again, whether, people who are pushing these charges, it's very easy to paint Vince as a deviant given his darkly creative product, but by the same token, it's hard for us not to believe that there's a huge element of darkness there. Well, I heard Vince Russo say something before, that he and Vince were alone one time, and McMahon turns to Russo and says, if you really knew who I am, you'd turn around and run like hell, and that actually harkens back to that song that he did. Remember his Tom Jones imitation on one of the wrestling albums? Stand back. Yeah. Well, he kind of told us that, didn't he?
My first taste with that, I interviewed Francine, the queen of ECW, a few years back. And during the course of the interview, we were just talking about how ECW was bought up by Vince and all that stuff. And she was sitting backstage for like 6 months. And she commented about how the fact that she was trying to get into storylines and so forth. And someone said, well, if you really want to get his attention, you might want to lower your décolletage, oil your breasts up, and maybe go talk to him. And she goes, I'm not doing that. Now that I look back on that conversation, there is a WWE official telling her how to get Vince's attention. So the culture is already there. As innocent as that may sound, or not innocent, I was taken back by the comment. We didn't discuss it any further. I did have some off the record comments from another WWE superstar, Maria Kanellis. That culture was alive and well when she was there. So, she's not saying she was a victim or anything like that. There's nothing like that. But we did have a conversation off the record that culture is there. So it's been there. And this is only going back a few years. So you're talking people, Rita Chariton, we're going back to the 80s and things like that. There's a lot of this element in this company. Evidently, it's been a very dysfunctional company, just like the McMahon family is dysfunctional as they portrayed themselves on TV. Words coming out now that there was a huge falling out over this with him and Shane. Yeah. These were supposed to be the heir apparents to Vince McMahon. Stephanie came back to the WWE after stepping down to replace her father, who was under investigation. Then when he came back, she left, and she didn't want to come back because she knew what the investigation. She found out what the investigation was about. So they've had an idea of what was coming down the pike for a while now. We're just seeing the end result of it. Yeah. So, this is, what's that old thing? You're sick as your secrets. Vince McMahon seems to be very, very sick, and now his secrets are coming out, and we're going to get a firsthand look at what his secrets have been.
I got to throw something out there. Now, I had 3 adult sons. I don't know about any of you having a daughter. I don't have a daughter, but anybody, and this is just personal to me, but
absolutely,
anybody who is defending Vince that has a daughter. Now, I can tell you that if I had a daughter and Vince McMahon shit on my daughter's head, Vince McMahon wouldn't be going to trial. I would be going to trial for the murder of Vince McMahon. Yeah. How would you feel? Like, everybody can make judgments. Oh, she's just a whore. She's looking for a payday. If it was your daughter or your sister, how would you feel if that happened to her?
I'm with you, man.
I'm with you too.
Totally. And I do. And I had the very same thought. Anyone who has a daughter has those same thoughts immediately. And certainly felt the very same way. It's curious too. There's only one picture of Miss Grant out there that I've seen. I don't know if you guys have seen more than one picture.
No, the same one. No. Yep.
But there's only seemingly one picture. I don't know if others have been scrubbed from the internet or what. But also of interest, I look at her and I can see, and I'm not saying this is the case, but there's a little resemblance. She could be a McMahon in some ways, I think, with the eyes and the hair and just everything. Again,
I only put this comment up just to show the picture. That's the only picture of her on the internet right now.
No, I agree. And that seems to be the case. Yeah, that's the only picture, which is curious too. But,
yeah,
and she's old enough to be his daughter, really.
Oh, definitely, there's no doubt about it. Now let's get back to what the lawsuit's alleging. The reason that we're hearing about these sexual innuendos and this crazy appetite for lust that Vince McMahon has is because she has to prove through her lawyers and through this lawsuit how Vince breached the non-disclosure agreement. And it was text messages, videos, really candid conversations. There's one text message that's embedded in here somewhere. I'll let the readers go ahead and look at it. One of the big long ones on the upper left corner talk about how he just showed videos and pictures of her engaging in sexual activity with him to 12 people backstage at a WWE either event or a meeting or whatever. So there are 12 people now that have witnessed this. She's only trying to prove that the NDA was breached in this manner. It doesn't matter what's inside the text messages and the graphics is harmful enough, but for her to have to come out like this and be shown in a light like this just to prove that this man violated the non-disclosure agreement speaks volumes. I mean, she's trying to just prove one thing, and that's it. She's not trying to go after money. She's not trying to, she might have been a willing participant and all that stuff. But like I said before in my comments, there are sections of this lawsuit that says she said no. And he said no means yes. And
do we know anything about this young lady, though, before her, involvement with Vince McMahon? Do we
history?
Do we know anything about her as far as pre Vince McMahon? I know she was caring for aging parents. Brittany, do you know? Have you heard anything as far as what she did before that?
No, I did not. And I heard the same as all of you heard about her apartment manager is the one that hooked her. My guess is she wasn't paying the rent. So the apartment manager hooked her up with Vince McMahon as a way to get her rent paid. And he knew exactly what he was doing.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we don't know about that context. I question everything. Okay, if she's on the verge of bankruptcy, let's analyze this aspect. She's living in a condo complex where Vince lives in the penthouse. Vince is a billionaire. Vince is paying for a high price penthouse wherever it is, and she's living in that same building, which means she has to have some money from somewhere. And she's on the verge of bankruptcy. And, instead of like most people, you look for a new place to live that you can afford, never mind just staying in that place and trying to find a job and all that. Something didn't jive with me in that part of the lawsuit. Like, to me, it's like, okay, this condo manager turned around to Vince McMahon, who just happened to live in the penthouse above her. Like, okay, but she was already in the building. Okay, so she did come from some type of money, whether she had money invested or whatever. I don't know. I don't know her background on that. That was the first thing that kind of caught me off guard a little bit.
Yeah.
But as it went on,
Joe, to quote the great Bill Clinton, you just read my mind. Because I thought the exact same thing. It's like, what is this woman doing living? How could I heard struggling financially. I heard bankruptcy.
Yep.
All that stuff. Financial
she's
distress.
Emotionally unstable. She just lost her parents.
But she's living in the same condo complex with Vince McMahon. That condo isn't cheap.
That's what I'm saying.
That was the one thing that kind of and I'm a numbers guy. I've done finance my whole life. It's like, well, how could you afford to live there unless she wasn't paying the rent?
Right.
Yeah. Maybe her parents were paying it, though.
That's what I think, Brittany. I agree with you. Yeah. I think it was her parents' place, and they were paying it when they passed away. That was, she stayed there, but she had no means to pay for it.
Another thing that caught me off guard a little bit was the whole relationship between her and Vince did start out as friends, and then it got kind of weird where he would answer the door in a towel or, tell her that he was getting her a job at the WWE. All the way up until that point, everything was, oh, will you have sex with me, or will you date me, or will you whatever? And she was like, no. And then he would just transfer it over to like, well, I'm still working on that job for you, blah, blah, blah. All for a $75,000 a year by the way.
Ew.
So anyways, they almost consummate their relationship, according to the lawsuit. From there, she goes to interview a WWE corporate, sits down in a conference room with 2 or 3 individuals who are just strictly on their computers. And this is supposed to be an interview. Now, if you ever had an interview with 3 people, you're asked general questions. Who are you? How are you? Business background.
Line, yeah.
According to this lawsuit and according to her testimony and statements, there was no conversation between the 3 people in there other than amongst themselves saying, okay, where are we going to put her in this company? Where can we put her? That's not a job interview.
Right.
That
No,
sounds
it's a done
like
deal.
Vince said, find a place for her, and that's it.
Right.
And I thought that was weird. Again, you're going on this interview. You're assuming this relationship with a guy who's going to get you a job for 75 grand a year, which by the way, she ended up making more because she kept getting raises, which is probably another symbolic gesture of hush money. But 75 grand a year and just to go through that for the first year or so of just getting to become an employee of WWE just was dumbfounding to me.
Yeah.
I was like, you go on this job interview and she's all dressed up, ready to answer questions. And they didn't ask her one question. They talked amongst herself. It lasted 20 minutes. She actually texted Vince while she was in the office. This is in the actual lawsuit, saying, I don't know what they're doing, but they're not talking to me. And Vince finally texted the people that were in the office and said, somebody say something to her to that effect. Let her know where she's going to be going.
How would he say it in Vince's words? Say something. God damn it.
It's like, instead of you're fired, you're hired. I don't know.
Right.
So the lawsuit gets very, very detailed in these instances. So if you get a chance, I would highly it makes for a very entertaining reading.
I read,
but a lot of information we don't need to know about.
Joe sent it to me, and I spent a Saturday morning reading it. I thought, you know what, maybe I'll read three pages of it. I thought after the first 3 pages, you know what, I'm going to read another couple of minutes. I wound up sitting down and reading the whole thing. Very, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, I just find it very. There is some, we're finding out all the details. We're only finding out about the details of this relationship because she's trying to prove something. So I forget that analogy that you used, that you have to prove this in order to get that. And that's what she's doing. She had to prove that the NDA was breached. How did you do that? Well, I had a relationship with him. We had crazy, crazy sex. I had threesomes and I had slept with everybody. You drop a UFC champion, whoever that might be, which the Wall Street Journal is now saying is Brock Lesnar. I feel bad for everybody involved because this is not a good situation because Brock Lesnar's married. He's got kids in college now. He's trying to live out his life. It's just really, really sick and twisted. To go back to John Laurinaitis, he's married to Nikki and Brie Bella's mother. Yeah. And there was some detailed conversation between Vince and him and John about John's wife was about to find out he had to get a new phone. And she was worried, oh my God, where's the phone? Did it get erased? Did the messages get deleted? So there's already that anxiety with her in regards to just one aspect of that. And that's what John Laurinaitis. These are high profile people. And now do the math, look at the timing of it all. When John Laurinaitis was let go, it was directly result of the investigation that was underway against Vince McMahon. So and that's probably why he did come out and didn't deny it, but it essentially threw Vince under the bus and calling himself a victim. So, there's a lot to be played out here. It's going to get scary. It's going to get real scary.
I can't believe that poor woman with that first horrible marriage that she had, and she raised those 3 kids alone, and then to think she found the love of her life, and this is what this guy's doing to her behind her back.
I don't know. It's like that family. You don't air the family's dirty laundry. Well, we're going to get everybody's dirty laundry, but by the time this is all said and done, because what's going to end up happening is we're going to know more about Brock Lesnar. If in fact it's Brock Lesnar, we're going to know more about Johnny Laurinaitis, Johnny Ace, as we all like to call him. Yeah. Obviously, we know about Vince McMahon, but like I said, who are the additional women? Who are the people in WWE that knew that, there was a comment, somebody might have been in the chat, that you can work for a company and know how bad it is, but you go there, you're a paycheck person, you go there, you do your job and you leave, even though you know what goes on behind closed doors. I think that's going to be what the culture is at WWE. People knew what was going on, just nobody had the guts to do anything about it because the controlling aspect is that's my money. That's how I make a living. That's how I pay my bills. That's how I afford myself. It can get really, really crazy.
They were all in fear of their own jobs. I mean, who's going to speak up? Because they got their own families to support. And what's Vince McMahon going to do? Say, "Oh, I understand you. You took the high road." He's going to kick them out.
Yeah. And the chat is very active. There's no kudos to everybody out there.
Most of the chat is very judgmental against Janelle Grant. I guess the truth is going to come out, and maybe I'm going to take a lot of shit for being pro Janelle Grant, but I have you heard of the Stockholm syndrome?
Yeah, absolutely. Patty Hearst.
I mean, that woman, Patty Hearst, geez, they grew up within a billionaire's family.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, she has a Glock at a bank.
Yeah.
Changed her name to what? Tanya.
Yeah.
That one of the
Seinfeld reference.
what they're actually trying, the lawyers now want to get familiar with the term trauma bond. This is a true thing.
It's from narcissistic personality disorder and the relationships when narcissists do that. Yeah, they create the trauma bond with their victim. Right. Absolutely. So and I see all the telltale signs of that whole narcissistic abuse pattern here and in his personality. And how could it not develop given the torture that he went through as a kid, you know? I mean, you talk about having an edible complex, and you talk about the torture he received, not only from the stepfathers, but the mother too. And just that depravity that he more than alluded to back, I think 2001, there was a great article, great interview he had, and he started to open up a little bit about that. So how can that not damage him too, you know? When his dad came in.
Vince McMahon did not have the best life growing up whatsoever.
He did not.
I mean,
again, not as an excuse, but as just a way to understand. No, but I
think a part of this was to, like, whatever his father accomplished, he was going to absolutely blow him out of the water, just to show him, you shouldn't have left me with my mother and my stepfather.
Now, on the professional side of things, when it involves TKO or Endeavor, a term that is being thrown around there is called vicarious liability. Mm-hmm. Now, even if TKO was the owner at the time of the conduct, generally vicarious liability, meaning one party being liable for the conduct of another, doesn't pass with what they call intentional conduct. Now, if this was intentional conduct, it all depends on the nuances in the relationship between TKO and the prior owners. If this is ever proved, this could actually throw out any merger that WWE and TKO and Endeavor had. It's a long shot because it would take probably a long time to prove. But I think that TKO just pretty much summed it up that, Vince no longer works here. He's not part of anything. He does have stock options now, but he has no controlling stock options. And my guess would be if they really want to cut ties with anything to do with him, they would just buy him out and get him off any entity of TKO, Endeavor, WWE, which could be coming down the pike. That could happen in the next hour for all we know.
I bet.
They do need to cut their ties. I mean, I know Ari Emanuel has been saying he was never a big fan of Vince. Maybe he now knows why. Whether this merger was even on the chopping block at one point, because we're going back a couple of years now that Vince has been being investigated. So if this, the $17 million and hush money all came out due to that investigation, that almost jeopardized the whole merger with TKO and Endeavor. Vince actually had to pay that back to the board.
Yep.
He had no problem doing. We just didn't know what he was really paying the money out for. Now we're getting a real good idea of what it was.
Well, here's an interesting question, though. How far does the WWE go as far as eliminating Vince McMahon from their history, like they did with a Benoit?
They got to do that. Benoit.
That's like taking mitochondria out of a cell, though.
They really can't.
They can't.
He can't be denied. He just cannot be denied.
For an immediate, they can. They could just wipe the halls of history from him for now. And then as time goes on and all that stuff, I'm not saying, reinstate him or whatever and things like that. You got Benoit, who's, is a tragic situation, who still to this day, there are wrestling fans out there that said he was a phenomenal wrestler. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
But homicide and infanticide, man,
Jimmy Superfly Snooker is another example. They have banished him from WWE Hall of Fame. His stuff's not back up. It's a shame, but we don't know what we don't know. He was about to stand trial, then he was found unfit to stand trial. So, then he passed away. So we don't know.
And again, going back to Vince and I, he is 78. There is just so many factors that could contribute to his unwellness, and not to make a long distance diagnosis, but it's not out of the realm of probability that there's some dementia there, in some form. Absolutely, and
Mr. McMahon, he took a lot of chair shots
and the past traumas and just the lifestyle and just so much, So
I remember
that's a factor.
I want to say it was a couple of years ago when Vince came back. He did a rare public appearance on Raw, and Kevin Owens headbutted Vince.
I remember,
and Vince told Kevin to really headbutt him.
Yeah, of course he did.
And Vince got cut right open on TV.
The hard way, yeah.
And I'm saying, this guy's like 70-something years old, and he's getting headbutted like that, telling his talent to do that.
Yeah.
Not normal by any means, any stretch of the imagination. Not when you don't need the trauma involved with that. But like you said, Phil, you bring up a good point. His past, his history, his growing up lifestyle and all that stuff. I think there was some sexual abuse growing up. I don't think by his father, but by a family member or something like that. But that could carry on to adulthood. We know all of that. But trauma bond is a big thing that you're going to hear about with this lawsuit. If it goes any further, like I said, 90% of the time, it is settled out of court. She only wants the NDA to prove that the NDA was breached. She doesn't want money from all this. She made it abundantly clear. But we have to look at the other side of it, too. If the NDA was breached and she's free to tell her story, there's probably just as much money for her out there than easily what Vince would have paid her. So,
But really, the biggest risk right now is from the federal government, though. I mean, once they, if they indict him, this story takes a whole different turn.
Yeah.
Well, if you're looking at the civil, I mean, I asked people in the chat. I see them; they're having a lively discussion, and it's awesome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You really need to read the lawsuit and what it entails. I mean, she's not a money grubber. At least she's not portrayed like that. She's not going after Vince's money. She's merely just pointing out the fact that the NDA was breached. She's already conceding the fact that she was in a relationship with Vince and several other people in WWE. She's identifying the kind of culture that was in WWE where it was okay to be sexually assaulted and so forth. There are instances, I know I sound like a tape recorder, in the lawsuit that she does claim that she said no. And the Brock Lesnar / UFC champion, this whole thing was stemming that Vince set them up on a date so Brock could sleep with her or this UFC champion because his contract was up. And if he slept together, he would re-sign the contract. Well, turns out if you read it all the way through, the rendezvous never really happened because after they got through with dinner, Brock was so shit-faced, he went back to the hotel and passed out. He didn't even walk her back to the room or anything. So, but there are text messages out there. Brock's name or the UFC champion's name has been blacked out. So, editing it out. So, Wall Street Journal so far is the only public media outlet that has named Brock Lesnar and all this, even though he's not named in the lawsuit. Just a UFC champion, someone that they're trying to re-sign, highly successful WWE superstar. Doesn't take the genius to figure that out because it sure as hell wasn't Bobby Lashley. So, so you got to think about it.
Matt Riddle?
Yeah, Matt Riddle.
It's kind of weird that,
I feel bad for everybody involved that is not guilty of anything. And I can only imagine the number of people's names that are going to get brought up. I mean, now there's 3. Yep. There's going to be probably 40 before this is over with, if not more.
Well, my thing here is, okay, we have to look at, they just had a massive layoff too when TKO took over on the corporate side. Like we're talking like 50, 60 people lost their jobs, which is what happens when companies merge. They were higher ups, corporate people. Did they know? So, they're going to be sought after. Kevin Dunn, a longtime WWE confidant with Vince McMahon, he resigns. You start to see this domino effect happen. And there's always going to be that question mark over their head now. Did you know? Did you know? And all it takes is just one of them to say, yeah, I did know. It's a domino effect. Once they all go, it's just going to keep going. And it's going to be sad. I mean, it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's the only way to look at it. But again, to clarify, she's not suing Vince for money. She's suing to get out of the NDA. And the only way she could do that is to prove that he breached it. She's got the proof, supposedly. But it's pretty hard to deny the facts that are in that lawsuit. And I really strongly suggest everybody in the chat, if you can, just read the lawsuit. It's about 50 pages.
Very entertaining.
It's not boring reading either, folks.
No, not at all.
Time-stamped, text messages, comments. It tells you what they're looking for. And it says in the bottom what they're after is just to get her out of the NDA. And of course, I know I mentioned this earlier. There are lawyers now looking at this NDA going, it's not even signed by Vince McMahon. Yeah. It was actually drawn up by Vince McMahon's personal attorney, McDevitt, I think is his last name.
Jerry McDevitt.
Jerry McDevitt drew it up. No
Longtime
other
lawyer.
lawyers were present, and I think this is the same for the other women too. The other 5 women that he paid the hush money to. Though it was only the lawyer, Vince, and the women. The women had no legal representation, and anybody in the legal community can tell you that a non-disclosure agreement is 2 parties represented by legal representation that agree on whatever the disclosure in the agreement is. It's to protect each other from the agreement. As far as this agreement looks like, it looks like she was never protected.
Right.
And that Vince was the only one protected because he put the fear of God in her and says, you sign this or that's that, or I'll ruin you. And I think there's some threats in that lawsuit. It's good reading. You need to check it out. Read the lawsuit. All you have to do is type it in. You can download it on a PDF and you can have it forever and study it because it's public record. And
I'm
by the
wondering
way,
if any of the
I don't mean to
female
hijack.
wrestlers are going to come out.
I don't mean to keep hijacking this, but nobody knew about this until I think I told Phil, the small TV station out of Rhode Island put it out there. Can you imagine that? A small TV station got a hold of this because the filing was in Connecticut. Somebody who worked for the TV station found out that this lawsuit was filed and that blew up from there. So can you imagine? This thing might have not even been out there if this small little TV station in Rhode Island didn't pick it up.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You know what,
local news.
I would like to know you guys' opinion on what is the reason that she wanted to get out of the NDA? For what? How would that benefit her?
Based on, well, it doesn't really say in the civil lawsuit. From what I understand, she just wanted out of it because she's been in counseling since all this happened, and I think it's part of her healing process. And I honestly, I think she got legal advice and saw that this is probably not a valid NDA. That's what I honestly.
Well, I think the biggest part of the problem from her perspective, from what I can tell, is that Vince was the one who breached the NDA by revealing details that she had said, she signed and swore that she wouldn't disclose, but he felt free to share them with everybody else.
Yeah.
Like within company or outside of company, though, it makes me wonder, does this apply to, information within the company or outside of the company? What does this NDA cover?
But he also stopped paying her, right?
Because I think he found out, based on the timeline, Vince found out that she lawyered up, and that's when the payment stopped.
Right.
So I mean, which coincides.
I have to ask myself, for what reason is she trying to get out of the NDA? How is that going to benefit her?
Well, that's
a book.
A book.
A book bringing down this combat sports juggernaut. The feds for a long time the feds had the UFC and WWE in their crosshairs for years. I remember the late John McCain saying that UFC was human cockfighting and wanted to do away with it.
I remember
and their athletes right now are so outspoken. They don't adhere to any script. Dana White included. They're outspoken. They're certainly what people would call base, and they speak their mind whether you agree or not. And I think that ruffles a lot of feathers too. They're influencers in many regards. I mean, they appeal to such a segment of the male population in a given age group, and I think they wield a lot of influential power. And I think that certain powers would maybe want to see them tempered a little bit.
Brittany, to get back to your question, Brittany, this comment probably sums up why she wanted out of the NDA. She wants to blow the doors off WWE and how they operate. She wants the doors of secrecy that have been blown off their hinges, and she wants to fill the air with fresh air, fill the headquarters. I would imagine that obviously this is part of the reason. Do I know personally why she wanted out? I have no clue. I don't think it's money at this stage of the game, because I don't think she pissed through $1 million of Vince's money already. And she was pretty much working with that company up for, I think, until like 2 years ago. So she, and I want to say she finished up at a little under $200,000 a year she was making with them. So, that'll be, again, a book, a television appearance as to why she wanted to come out.
A movie, maybe.
A movie. Who knows? I mean,
I think she's a book is going to be a huge deal. Paid multiple television interviews, appearances, 2020, this, that, all the others. And I just have to say, I mean, is it like an AA thing where you have to confront the people that you hurt, or in reverse, she wants to confront the people that hurt her as part of her trauma healing? Is it that, or is it, I know what I can get by blowing the doors off of this?
Could be a little bit of both if you want.
Or, maybe she stops the next woman from having to go through this. I mean,
that would be nice if that is the reason.
I would like to think she took the high road, and that's why she's doing it. Who knows, though? It's really funny though. We in America, we used to protect our heroes. Like, nobody knew that FDR had a mistress, and in the 60s, I guess some people knew that JFK was sleeping with everybody, but the newspapers didn't do anything to expose it. They did, try to protect him. Where now, I mean, social media. I mean, I remember. Mickey Mantle was one of my heroes besides Bruno.
No, not a Mickey Mantle reference again. Oh,
well, but no. I mean, it's relevant though. I was horrified to learn that Mickey Mantle was not a good person. Mickey Mantle was a raging alcoholic.
Yeah, he
was very nasty to his fans. He had a wife and 4 kids at home that he cheated on like 8 million times, and so. I think we're at the point now. It's almost like we treasure building up heroes so we can knock them down. And I think a lot of people are going to be. A lot of people looked up to Vince McMahon. I can tell just by reading some of the comments in the chat room that a lot of these people. I don't want to say maybe idolized him, but certainly looked up to him. And it's a very hard realization.
Yeah,
when your hero is not what you thought they were.
Almost he's like a family member. These people who are on this little box that we watch and, weekly, nightly, or whatever for decades on end, they almost become family in a way. We're trauma. As one of our chatters said, Yard 899 said that Vince kind of trauma bonded us with the WWE product in some ways. And, I think there might be a little truth to that.
I mean, Saturday morning. I mean, the guy was in my house every Saturday morning interviewing all these wrestlers. And
why do you think they call it television programming? They're programming.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. Absolutely, you know that. I mean? Yeah.
I think it's a generational thing. If you had social media back in the day when Ted Williams was around or Mickey Mantle was around, these guys would not be the heroes they would be. Right. That's just how it is. Everybody, you turned a blind eye to that stuff years ago. Oh, he's a drunk, or he's a batterer, or he does this. Let's not talk about that. There's too much on the line there.
He hit 50 home runs last year. So
now you flip it around, and you can't even get a job now without being subjected to questions that are just beyond me. That you'd have to answer now, because and even now they look at your social media history. They look at that stuff. So, it's a tough thing. And with all this stuff coming out, I just want to reiterate that, Vince has not been convicted of anything yet. And I say yet strongly, because if any normal person reads this lawsuit and can't fathom why he is not in handcuffs yet, or at least been arrested, I have a feeling it'll come to that later on. Just based on what I've seen in a civil lawsuit, and they're investigating him now. And if there's any road that leads them down that avenue, the feds are going to take that road, because that's what it's all about now. Headlines, views, and all that stuff. And that's what they're looking for. That's what
the expression, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a shit ton of smoke.
Unless you're CNN and there's a huge fire in the background saying everything's fine here, folks, nothing to worry about.
Now, let me ask you guys a question. Now, this is more wrestling related. Do you think that The Rock, his now, eminent appearance at WrestleMania, do you think that's kind of a diversion by the WWE to take our minds off all this bullshit with Vince?
Yes.
Or is it possible? I mean,
if you asked me that literally 2 hours ago, I'd say yes. But finding out now that The Rock versus Reigns was set in stone on January 3rd, before all this, unless they knew this was coming down the pike, because we were 3 weeks.
I was going to say, that's not that long ago.
Unless they knew. But The Rock did come out this past weekend and say that the reason he showed up on SmackDown and did what he did and all that stuff, even though it was all planned out and everything, is to get everybody's mind, because that's what the WWE does. They want you to forget about life for a while, even though it's the WWE's life that was people were trying to forget about on the corporate side, wanted that. And like I said, we only get what they want to give us. You don't think they know what's going on? Of course they do. There'll probably be another news dump. They're classic for this on Thursdays and Fridays. Could give everybody the weekend to digest it. We used to call it the old Friday night news dump, right, Phil?
Absolutely.
Dump on Friday at 6. Friday at 6.
Yeah, no one will see it, baby. No one will, or they'll digest it slowly. It won't be that shock value. Yeah,
So
no water cooler talk. Yeah.
I think, like I said before, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But if they're telling us that this was set in stone January 3rd, The Rock first reigns, and I go with it, then fine. You know, it's business. But a lot has transpired since then to make you scratch your head. You know, that old song, things that make you go,
And another old song, Joe, and that's a great quote too. And I'm just by happenstance wearing tie-dye tonight, so I think of an old Grateful Dead song. Well, of course, they're all old songs at this point, but the victim or the crime. Jerry sings, am I the victim or the crime? You know, there's a little bit of, not everyone is 100% good or bad, you know, and, we have to ask these questions continuously.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I do not feel bad for Vince McMahon, not one bit, but I do feel bad for all the people that did look up to him. And now, well, I mean, some of them have to be horribly disappointed. Some of them are going to defend him to the very end, even after he's, either if he is indicted or if he is convicted. But
those supporters have come out. There's supporters for Vince McMahon that have come out. There have been wrestlers and people that worked him and said they've never saw that side of it, which could be the case. We don't know what this guy was dealing with, if it's a mental health issue or something like that, whether he's schizophrenic. I don't know. We don't know. I don't know him personally to know that. What I can tell you that, I mean, I look at these videos, even from this past January, we went to a UFC event with The Undertaker in Vegas.
Yeah.
And it's like, he had to have known something was coming down the pike because he's been under investigation. And to have The Undertaker still, walk with him and be with him and all that stuff. People like that want to, as much respect they want to give your old boss and all that stuff, you still want to keep your image squeaky clean, so to speak, and not go down that avenue. And right now, anybody who's associated with Vince McMahon is technically guilty in a sense. I feel bad for Shane, Stephanie, and Triple H. Triple H knows the whole deal. You tell him it's his son-in-law. He's been with the company for 30-something years. He's seen it.
You know who I feel bad for? I feel bad for Vince's grandkids when somebody says to one of these 8-year-old girls, "Did your grandfather really shit on a woman's head?" What do they say?
They have the same thing I feel for Brock Lesnar. These kids are in college too, so they're probably getting the social media backlash worse than the 8-year-old grandkids. This is a tough situation for any family member. Never mind.
That's another victim. You're talking like his kids and his grandkids. They're gonna. I mean, they got to live with this now.
Yep. Where's Linda in all this?
I thought of that earlier. Like, I haven't heard a word from her.
Another disturbing thing in the lawsuit states that the reason Vince had Janelle sign that non-disclosure agreement is because Linda found out about their relationship.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, okay, their relationship. What about the whole relationship? Like John Laurinaitis, the threesomes, all that stuff. How much does she know? Because this was not no casual affair. Let's talk about that.
The guy's living by himself. What does she think he's doing? Watching Netflix? I mean, come on.
They're still technically married. I know. There's pictures of him on dates with women too.
Right.
It's his age. Whether or not that's a show thing, I don't know. But they're still technically married. So I don't know. The repercussions on this is going to be huge. It's going to be huge.
Yeah. This is like, like when you build a train set and you purposely program it so that the two trains are going to collide. And I mean, it's going to happen. It's just happening right now in very slow motion.
Yeah.
But there's going to be so much more to this, I think.
But it's going to come fast and furious. They're going to give us, they're not going to give us little pieces like they did. They're going to give us boom, boom, boom. Let us dissect that. Like I said, this is the worst possible time. If you're just a casual fan and you do not know this is WrestleMania season, this is their biggest moneymaker of the year. Their biggest. This sets up the company's financial portfolio for the next 365 days. WrestleMania. This is a huge.
It's their Super Bowl. Yeah,
their Super Bowl.
Yeah,
it's TKO Endeavor's first time being involved with something like this, so they're going to get a taste of the financial windfall and all this stuff as well. to have this hovering over your head. Right now, it's obviously full damage control. They're probably going to try and at least until the night after WrestleMania or the night after the Raw after WrestleMania, they'll try and kibosh a lot of the information that's going to be put out in the media. I say that hypothetically, but judging by the week we had 2 weeks ago when it was all WWE, good news, good news, good news, and then boom, the bombshell, the implosion hit, was like, oh my God, this just like took everything away from all that. If they do that again before WrestleMania, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt.
And for the record, Joe, it can't be full damage control, of course, because now Bailey has been removed from it.
Right.
The big question remains: where's Dakota Kai gonna fall?
I know.
So, I mean, does this possibly have any repercussions with their deal with Netflix?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, yeah. I mean, what did they say? They had a Netflix day last week, and they said Vince is gone. That's all we care about, or something like that. I saw it in the chat as well.
Some of the stuff they have on Netflix, who are they to say? My God,
Right.
some of the garbage. Some of the
What scares me about the Netflix deal is they've never streamed live sports ever. I think they're going to start doing that this month. They're going to actually film a live tennis match. And quote unquote, the CEO of Netflix says, yeah, we got a year to get this straight. You're going to allow a 30-something year mainstay Monday night product, your bread and butter that puts you on the map, go to a streaming service, which is fine if it's Netflix, but wouldn't you have something more solid? They have a year to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's great that they paid, I figured out, what is it, $5
$5 billion
over 10 years. I mean, that's no chump change, but yeah, you better have it figured out. If you're going to be streaming a live wrestling show every Monday night for 3 hours, which I really wish they'd stop doing 3 hours. That's besides the point.
Yeah.
Unless they're going to let the swears go and the blood fly and all that stuff. I just think that they probably could have done a little bit better, whether it was on the NBC Universal side of things and stuff like that. I just don't. And don't forget, folks, we talked about this in the past. Netflix's deal doesn't kick in until January of 2025. USA Network deal with Raw ends October 31st. So from October 31st to January 1st, you have 2.5 months where right now, as of 7:46 on July 5th, 2024, Raw has no landing spot to be shown.
Right.
So, but hey, they got a year to figure it out. Whatever. Okay.
Cartoon Network would be my prediction.
Yep, I hear you. So
what does everybody say? Indicted, convicted? I'm going to say not indicted. I do think and settled out of court.
In regards to the civil lawsuit?
Well, I'm saying federal, no indictment. Civil, I think it's going to be settled out of court, no trial.
If there's no indictment federal wise out of this, after what I've seen in the lawsuit, then I'd say just like in wrestling, the fix is in. There's no doubt about it. Because if you read this lawsuit, even just some of the stuff that's mentioned in there, and they investigate it and they find out even a third of that is truth, that's grounds for immediate warrants, subpoenas, indictments, you name it. I think the civil case will settle out of court. I agree. And I think that's going to be the low end of it. The high end is going to be, there is an indictment. Who's going to be named in that indictment remains to be seen, because it's just not going to be Vince McMahon. It just can't be him. He didn't act alone. He had people there. People knew of the situation, whether if not they acted with this girl, were involved physically with this girl. If you even knew about it and you did know about it, you're just as guilty. You're just as guilty. I think Massachusetts natives remember, was it Big Dan's the case? Jodie Foster and the accused.
Oh, is that like Fall River or down that way? The pool table?
It was out there. Yeah, she got raped by a couple of guys.
On the pool table.
And the one guy they got to squeal, they arrested him for knowing that it happened and he witnessed it.
Yep.
And that's how they got him. So this is a perfect scenario in the corporate world. If they knew about it and they find out that somebody knew about it in the corporate world or talent world, wherever in WWE, it's a domino effect. It's going to be more than just Vince McMahon indictment. It's going to be a whole thing.
It's like Seinfeld, the last episode. They were all arrested.
They're going to indict enough of these people that that some of them are going to fold and turn.
Definitely.
They're going to cut deals with the Fed.
They have to,
in return for their testimony.
And that's how it goes. and that's how it
So,
goes.
I mean,
And
at
now,
that point, it's not good at all.
what's the storybook ending here? I don't know. Vince McMahon disappears. I don't know. He's got those means. This is another thing too. This guy's a billionaire. He could flee the country.
Mr. Mojo Rising. He can
He
fake
could
his
flee
own
the
death.
country
Yeah.
right now.
I'm not sure. I don't think they seized his passport.
They would be smart too.
But he's been in Saudi Arabia since the indictment. So I mean, since the investigation. So they, with the indictment will come, seizing of the passport and all that stuff. We've seen this a million times.
Yeah.
It's the Harvey Weinstein effect. It's he might be the face of it, but there's going to be other players involved here, and they're going to be just as found guilty as Vince.
Yeah, I think the two big ones are going to be Vince and John Laurinaitis. And then I think it's just going to go down from there. And, like Joe said, it's going to be a domino effect. And if they even knew about it, they're going to be in trouble as well. Think about Triple H.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, are we gonna see the ties to Epstein Island next? Like,
oh God,
I'm telling you, this is a crazy world we live in now, and the stars of the universe and baby cakes will tell you there's some strange stuff happening in the universe right now.
Absolutely.
So she was not shocked that this came down the pike, but I can tell you right now, we're in a crazy time thing right now where all will be revealed. And whether or not our childhood hero goes to jail or, the guy that beamed in our living rooms every Saturday morning alongside Pat Patterson, Bruno Sammartino ends up behind bars.
Yeah.
We're left sitting there going, what the hell just happened?
You're right.
If that were in place instead of Johnny Ace, I don't know. Maybe this wouldn't have happened quite like it did.
Yeah. Another thing about the Johnny Ace thing, when I first read the lawsuit when it dropped, I'm like, why hasn't anybody commented yet? Vince denied it right off the bat. The lawyers denied it right off the bat. Vince resigned right off the bat. Took Johnny Ace like a week to respond.
Yeah.
Like, what are you waiting? That's not damage control. That's like, and then to respond the way he did, basically burying Vince, admitting it had happened, and pretty much outing yourself that you participated in a sexual assault. What do you like? That's not very wise.
Desperate man.
Wise, not a good defense if you ask me. But right now he hasn't said anything since, so maybe they put the muzzle on him. I don't know.
Yeah, and did you see the statement that the Bell is sent? Everybody's criticizing that as well.
Of course they are.
What
refresh my memory, Brittany? What did they say?
It was so vague. They just said basically they feel really bad about anything that's happened, and they didn't name anybody. And they didn't say anything about their stepfather. They didn't say Vince. They didn't use any names. They just, we empower women, and
they are shocked. They are shocked and disheartened with the recent allegations against members of the WWE. They didn't even say Vince.
Right.
This is something we don't stand or condone from anyone, no matter who they are. We want women to feel safe in the workplace and all that. They just put out a very vague statement. They didn't name names, but the casual fan doesn't realize that they're. I can't call him a father. Can they call him the father-in-law by marriage? Yeah, right. Father-in-law. Yeah, their mother is married to Johnny Ace, so it's but they didn't name him. It's almost like they put. I've seen the rumors around there too. Like, how did the Bella twins advance so quick? With they weren't that talented folks, and I don't mean to shoot them down. I know wrestling is a tough industry and all that stuff, but to grow and get to where they are that quick. Another question mark is now raised. Were they involved? Did they have something to do with it? Things like that. This is the domino effect we talk about. It's not who you know, what you know. It's what about the people that do know? You know what I mean? Like, what did they know? They're there. Their father-in-law is married to their mother. They had to have had a conversation. Just like Triple H is in a tough situation right now.
Yeah.
And the day the Royal Rumble, he had the presser right after that. The first question they asked him was like, it's been a tough week. And he goes, I choose to focus on the positive, which sounds like somebody who is shell shocked just like us to hear what would happen. Whether he knows everything remains to be seen, but I don't care. They were together an awful lot. And like I said, if it ever came out to something like he knew what was going on and didn't say nothing, he could be held liable as well. So
sure,
it's a tough situation for everybody, family members, kids. Even if you just came in contact with Vince on one time back in that day, and he had a bar drink with somebody and exposed himself or something like that. It's tough. It's a tough situation. And like I said again, I'll say it again, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
Will it become, or is it already the biggest scandal in the history of professional wrestling?
I think it's going to supersede that. No doubt about it.
I think it will easily become, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it is. Yep. I hate to say, I think I saw that somewhere either in the chat as well. Vince is going to go out with a bang. And it's like, no pun intended, right? No pun intended. But it's just
up Schitt's Creek, so to speak.
Yeah,
I like to make light of serious things because that's how we move along in this. But I really got to ask, what did he name those dildos?
I know.
I mean, the black dildo, the white dildo, like they were named after WWE superstars. That's the one thing I'm going to look for when I see.
And there was a dildo with no chin, and he named it James Ellsworth.
Oh.
Every dildo with no chin has a fighting chance.
Oh my God! Very good, Benny.
Oh my God! But I mean, just some of the sick stuff that's out there. That's in that lawsuit. If you take a look at it, just real. I mean, they would. Johnny Most, who we all know was a sports broadcaster for the Celtics. He was my broadcasting teacher growing up. And he told me when I was in school, I go, what's the best thing you could do for when you interview someone? And they say, go for the jugular. Ask that difficult question, all that stuff. So I said, okay. So I take that. I think what Janelle Grant and her lawyers did right now is they went for the jugular. There's no turning back for Vince from this. Even if in a hypothetical world, he's vindicated all the way through, this stuff is still public record. This stuff is still out there. His reputation is now ruined. His, everything that he's done for the WWE and the universe is now tainted. Yeah. But everything remains to be seen, just another day in the life, I guess.
Is he going to be walked down the Green Mile by the big boss man and be put in a cell with nails now and orange jumpsuits? I mean, how's it going to play out,
That's crazy.
Maybe in another.
Would love that.
Flair going in the ring at 74 years old, drunk and kind of tarnishing his legacy. This is like destroying your legacy.
Yeah.
I love Yard Ape 99 says Ric Flair once said, if he dies, you find my phone, throw it in the trash.
Yeah, Yard Ape's got some quality quotes here. He had another one.
He does.
Let me see if I can find it here.
Oh, Joe Myers, white was Brock, black was for Lashley. We know what that means. God. These are some really, oh man, my God.
I wonder if there's a big black one that's Mark Henry.
Oh, Jesus. That's shaped like a hand.
They'd call that one SD or something, Special Delivery Jones.
There you go.
The Mae Young special.
The Mae Young special. Once too many times, right?
Oh God, unbelievable.
What do you say, guys?
Gives new meaning to intestinal fortitude.
Oh,
there you go.
He's here all week, folks. Try the veal. Oh boy. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, tomorrow's a new day, for all we know, like I said, there'll be another news dump Thursday or Friday, but Thursday is here's an interesting, Thursday is the WrestleMania press conference, Thursday night, 7:00 Eastern time on Peacock. Don't be surprised if something else comes out around that time, because it just seems like whenever there's something good happening at WWE lately, something on the flip side's going to happen. So you never know.
We'll be on air then too, won't we?
Oh, probably, yeah.
And Yard Ape does win the quote of the night, which is, if Johnny Cochran were around, it would be, if the shit don't fit, you must have quit.
He's had some good ones tonight. The trauma bond with Vince and WWE for sure.
Bill Clinton would say, I always liked that one.
Maria Davis says Vince has a poop fetish.
Yeah, I'll say.
That's going to be like a sick fetish. I just can't even see the I don't know what that word is I'm looking for. Like, I just can't picture that. I don't think I could even do that in front of somebody.
No.
I mean, I don't care how messed up I was.
If I'm home by myself and I go to the bathroom, I still lock the door. I'm serious.
It would take more. I couldn't even be shit-faced and do that. So I'm just saying.
Me either. That's disgusting.
Oh my God. It's just horrible.
There are some people that I know in wrestling, actually. Yeah. We had heard back in the late 80s, we heard two of the guys at Kowalski's were into that kind of thing. And
defecating on each
Yeah.
other?
yes.
Damn.
Isn't there a word for that? Like some kind of fetish?
There is. I
It has
fecal fetish, perhaps.
Phil, you came up with that way too fast, man. Way
No
too fast.
kidding.
No, isn't like
I go to the bathroom. I don't know.
Steamer? Isn't that what
No.
Cleveland steamer is?
But we heard it, and
A fecal
You know-
facial.
Oh my!
originally, the girls, I can say, thought that it was a joke. We all thought it was a joke. And then a couple of the guys came to us and told us at the school, that, we're not kidding. This is what he really does. And there was two of them. And there was one that said he liked the girl to get on top of a glass table, take a shit, and he'd be underneath the glass table and watch.
That was the
And
rumor about Stallone.
That sounds like a goddamn science experiment.
But what? How is that anything?
Why would
Of a
anybody
turn-on.
enjoy? I don't know. To each his own, right?
Oh,
I mean,
God.
if we all had the
That's a
same
shitty
taste,
situation.
there would be like a Volkswagen dealer that sold white Volkswagens to everyone because we all
Yeah,
had
I
the
know,
Next
but
week
still.
on the fecal facial files, Dr.
Jeez.
Phil will fill us in.
Oh my! I'm not that versed. Thank God. My God.
Right?
Well, it's 9:00, guys. I think we need to let these nice people get back to their Monday Night Raw. What do you say?
I say
know
that's
it.
great.
Thank you, everybody in
Yeah.
the chat, for tuning in. This
Oh
is a
my
great
God,
chat.
so much! Yeah, thank you, everyone.
More to come, I'm sure. My goodness.
Oh yeah,
Way
I
more.
think we need to do this again, but
We have to follow up to the follow up to the follow up.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. So
Now,
on behalf of
Brittany, before we go, what website do you see that poop it on the table thing?
Uh,
Oh no, Joe. No.
Brit rhymes
was it
with
Joe with a
shit.
pen in her hand? Like
yeah, great.
Don't encourage him, Brittany.
Christ, I didn't
Nope.
even do that in high school. What the hell?
I know, right?
Wow. Okay.
All right, I'm going to try it again. On behalf of What a Day Joe, El Presidente Phil de Cesare, the bad girl Brittany Brown, and the
Fecal
player,
Phil.
thank you for watching, and see you next crime.
See you guys later.
Good night.
Thank you.
Dirty.